Jonathan, how are you today?
I'm doing well, AJ. Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Always good to see you, my brother. I really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to come onto the show and share your story of what you're doing. Some really groundbreaking initiatives with bridging legacies across campuses. But let's start with where you are here in the now. Seattle Academy. What is it like out west? You know, as director of admissions now, congrats on the promotion. What's it like in your school nowadays?
It's really difficult, but the teachers are really stressed, but we're working hard, doing our best to provide safety with the COVID protocols and standards, being able to educate these students in person. That online learning was really difficult, man. Just watching these kids come back to the classroom environment, it's a learning curve. We normally have been saying as we kind of adjust to the kids that a ninth grader coming in, they have a year and a half of growth that they miss. So technically a ninth grader is actually like a late blooming eighth grader just starting. And so it's been really difficult trying to re-engage, recalibrate the students as well as the teachers.
Well, so you're coming from Episcopal High School, one of my arch rivals in high school as a St. Albans alum in Alexandria, Virginia, right? You moved over to Seattle Academy this past summer. So you've seen the best of both worlds here in the DMV with high school boarding students and now out west with middle school and high school. What's the differences and similarities, especially from the 2020 school year to the 2021 school year?
Well, first of all, we had a wonderful doctor at our school at Episcopal who took care of us. We had several moments of COVID testing, COVID protocols and things. So we are 100% boarding school in an urban area of Alexandria, Virginia. So Episcopal, we are fully engaged. We had some very lightweight sports and athletics because we were very precautious about what we were doing. And so in that area, it was really kind of difficult being on pins and needles, not being able to be in the kids' space in the boarding school dynamic. As I matriculated out here to the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, you find that Seattle has a different flavor with the government structure and ideologies of those things. The politics are different in Seattle. So as I go and go to dinner with my family, we have to present our vaccination cards and then also show your ID. They may not be doing that in many places in Virginia. We have attestation moments where every day we give kids stickers on their badges or whatnot for COVID protocols. The biggest difference, I would say, is just the culture and flavor of the kids. The dress style is different. As you know, being a St. Albans guy, we had a dress code at Episcopal. There's no dress code at my current school, so it's a little bit looser in the demographic. But the best similarity, I would say kids are still kids. Kids are still rocking Jordans. They're still rocking the Yeezys and everything out here. It's a dynamic of sports still matter. It's still a language to talk. And the best part is donuts can still provide connectivity with these kids, where I kind of bribe the kids for friendship and giving them donuts as their faculty advisor. So it's really some good similarities there as well.
Right. But with these safety protocols, and even though you're in the classroom with these students, you talked about how it is out in Washington. 2 years ago, if we rewind a little bit, COVID-19, many of the first deaths were found in the state of Washington at nursing homes. So these students may have seen grandparents and other people in their households with COVID-19. Are you seeing any of that still as far as cases and people who are contracting the virus out there in Washington?
The numbers are higher than they've ever been since back in March when the pandemic first started. So it's been kind of a glaring issue. We have a really bad homeless population here. They're mentally unsafe with the use of legalized drugs here in Seattle and in Washington State. There's a demographic of homeless people that are just kind of unchecked because of the safety of law enforcement and such like that. And as you talk about COVID and the importance of the day-to-days of it, I was affected and had to travel back to Alexandria to bury my mom. My mom contracted COVID back in late October. And she was reluctant to get vaccinated. She finally did in September. She was going back and forth from senior care facility to this, that, and the other. And she contracted COVID and had some autoimmune issues prior. And she ended up losing her life to COVID because even after she may have recovered, her body and lung capacity never returned. So I try to tell kids and everyone, it may not be about your safety and strength and ability. It's about your elders and those people with autoimmune issues. And so it was a glaring thing that hit me hard, having not directly been affected by COVID until this past October.
Let me send my condolences to you and your family, you know, with that story. What do you want people to know about your mom and this virus that she fought?
I would like people to know that every Monday I share the Mama Used to Say quote on Instagram. and on LinkedIn. And for me, there are all these one-liners and all these quotes that any mother, especially a Black mother, that they share with their child every day, that you hear them and they resonate sometimes, and sometimes they go through one ear and out the other. But I just want to say that there's so many powerful moments that you have with your loved ones that you should cherish them, not just because of COVID, but because you can get hit by a bus. You can just fall and slip on the ice in the snow, anything. So every day that you can build something positive and lead a legacy, that's what it should be about. COVID aside, that's my biggest importance that my mother and my father instilled in me as a young person.
What's her biggest legacy that she leaves?
It's her grandkids. It's my kids. It's my son and daughter, Grayson and Vivian Lee. Every day I look at them and reflect on what she bestowed upon me, those lectures, those days in church where she slapped my hand, those days where she told me to pay attention, those days where she told me to study or listen to my father. It's the legacy that I'm giving to my kids, where it's weird. I find myself with those crazy sayings with my 5-year-old and my 2-year-old. And I'm like, I'm turning into my parents. It's that legacy there that I could carry on with my family.
You know, she's seen a lot of these different waves, the civil rights movement, and, you know, some of these Black Renaissance movements. And then to the summer of 2020, when we saw COVID and we saw the George Floyd movement as well, that sparked something in you, right? What was that? And what are you doing now to make our country and our predominantly white institutions more diverse and unique?
I'm glad we have some time to break into that. Overall, I was at my alma mater, Episcopal High School, and loved the school. Was part of that as a 4-year student there, being Alexandria native, being there. And as I was working in the admissions office and the Black Lives Matter and the Black ad account started, it hit me hard because I was reading these disparaging stories that back in the day when I was back there in 1997, some of those incidents were my lived experiences. But yet in 2020, I was reading those same things gone viral on Instagram. And the various people all over the country were telling their Black at stories that expanded to at everything. And it hurt. And I was an admissions officer selling the product of these schools make you better. But if you're diverse, these schools place a glaring magnifying glass on your and other, that maybe your social and economic background, maybe your language, maybe your education, maybe your finances of who you are as a person, or just simply your race or your hair texture, you're different. And for me, in that moment, I said, if I look at the alumni magazines of my alma mater and other institutions, there are not many Black faces in those alumni magazines. You look up and see those weddings, those childbirths, they're not brown people that populate those pages. And it hurt me to be one of 2 brown people that graduated from the school that worked there. But there may be 16 other white people that worked there as well that were there. And I'm like, is it not because that we're positive influences? So by doing that and seeing that, I reached out to some of my counterparts and said, hey, I would like to create a hashtag, Black Success from EHS. And in showcasing and spotlighting the wealth of Black doctors and lawyers and teachers and principals that grace those areas. Then expand it to Asian success and Latinx success, because I couldn't just make it about the brown thing. Because if we learned anything from Black Lives Matter, it got to the point where everyone started speaking out on the systematic racism that was going on in the country, right? And so then I reached out to you and highlighted you, AJ, and reached out to other people at Woodbury Forest, my other rival school that I hate even more than St. Albans. And in that moment, I wanted to just galvanize this network of brown people that have lived and flourished at these institutions to create a moment of atonement, to understand, yes, I know what you were called, how you felt, how it felt when there was beach week or ski trips. We couldn't afford to go on those trips, but our counterparts were going all the time, every weekend. To be able to say we're a network of powerful people, and because of the next generation, my kids, eventually your kids, we need to be successful in that moment. So that's what made me start my LLC.
You hit on something really important there at the end. Why does it matter for us to network and have this diversity in independent schools and predominantly white, you know, high school and prep and boarding schools, mostly in the Northeast, but also around the country?
In all of our schools, out having diverse demographics, having diversity this, diversity that. But when it really comes into time, do you mean that? Because truly with diverse perspectives and influences, it creates innovation. That friction and that animosity, those challenges, it creates a better thought path of unity together. It makes you go the tougher road and not always the easier road. And so in that area, it's important for us as people to come back. If I, as a Black person, go through my 4-year tenure at my alma mater and it was negative or positive, but if I never come back outside of the alumni basketball game or the rivalry football game, what am I contributing back to the institution? If I never give $1 back to my institution to support, how is my voice ever heard? Because we know at these institutions, money talks. So that's why it's important to give your time to volunteer and give your money back earmarked for purposes for your diversity initiatives or your thoughts. And that's why I think it's so important that I appreciate this connection with you to be able to provide this platform to speak, because it needs to be heard. If our stories aren't heard, we don't progress. We don't have the ability to really learn from our elders and continue to pass on the next knowledge and growth mindset to the next generation.
We all know microaggressions. We all know kind of now how there was this Black Lives Matter wave and this movement against racism and injustices, especially police brutality. But what were some of the things that stood out to you the most? And how did you act on that in starting, your LLC?
The way I acted on it was having conversations. That there are all these one-off talks of maybe myself and someone from the 2000 graduation class. But then as I started looking, I was able to talk to someone from the class of 1978 and hear their story. And I'm like, dang, their story is exactly the same as mine. I graduated in 2001. There's only 5 Black graduates with me in my class at Episcopal. There were 5 Black freshmen that came in, 2 or 3 of which left, but we still came in with 5, left with 5. And again, those numbers have drastically changed. Episcopal's gone from 20 African-American students to, I believe, 55 to 60 now over the 20-year tenure of knowing the school, 25 years. But again, those numbers are still different out of the 440 students total.
The numbers still have ways to go, but with BLAC, with the Black Student Fund, a better chance, those are the types of programs that are helping. But your program, BLAC, is mainly just you. What type of weight does that put on your shoulder, and how have you been handling all of this, trying to put in all of the Black success into one, platform and one portal and distributing it out, through COVID, through moving jobs, having young kids? You've got a lot on your plate right now.
I want to just thank my wife for just blessing me with the time to be able to wake up at 5 a.m. and take these calls that I take. I use my Pacific Northwest time zone to talk to people on the East Coast. So it's a lot of weight and pressure, but every day that I want to give up, I just go back to the Black Ad accounts and read it. And it reminds me, if I stop, they win. They being the institution that created this whole process, this systematic racism. If I give up, I'm going to put my kids, more than likely, because we know this pandemic, public schools are struggling right now. Everyone is rushing to independent schools. I am busy reading applications because everyone sees the value of reaching out for financial aid or paying for independent school education. So if I know that independent school is a way to go for my kids by middle school, by high school for sure, and I know that there's this glaring issue, why can I stop to let my diverse kids and students be in the same crosshairs that I went through? I've got to do this. I've got to do it.
As a dean and a director of admissions of an independent school right now, how difficult is it to do those jobs? How has COVID really stretched you?
It's been tough, man. Again, being able to, one, showcase the school facilities is impossible because of COVID safety protocols with inviting strangers into your community. 2, the teachers across the country, if not the world, are tired. It is so hard, and it's like the year never ended from last year because of the pandemic, then working from home, managing your daycares being closed, being scared, loss of loved ones, and then trying to just figure out what the purpose is in this whole process. And then now, if you think about the finances, people lost jobs. So if you already have a demographic of not that every brown person needs financial aid, but predominantly most brown people are earmarked to be on financial aid. But now you have affluent white people that now the standards of living have changed now, where someone that nets $200,000 might qualify for financial aid. Think about that. A family that nets $200,000 qualifies for financial aid, when really it might have been from a 3-generation household with a whole house of 4 or 5 different adults that net maybe $200,000. They need the financial aid. So now you have this pot of money that is drastically shrinking, but more hands are reaching in that are no longer just earmarked for what the purpose of financial aid might have really been for. And so that makes everything difficult. And so then the misconception of private schools, boarding schools, is it worth sending my diverse child to a non-diverse demographic of a school? All of those misconceptions and all those things require proper education, proper connection to those that have gone, like yourself and myself, is really important.
As we turn the page, though, from 2021 to 2022, what's your advice to the educator, the Black male educator who may be in the classroom, who may be a dean of students or a director of admissions? What is your advice to him? What is your advice to them for this 2022 school year?
Stick with it, stay with it. That if you feel like you're not making a difference, you are. It takes one child to make the whole job worthwhile. That you don't get into education to make a lot of money. You get an education because you like to communicate. I got into education because I like coaching. I like coaching basketball. You know that, having coached against you for a couple of years. I love kids. I love being able to work with them on executing plays, seeing their vision. So as you become an educator, as a Black person, a diverse person, or anyone, the difference of changing one child's life, of being that role model, is important. And it's important for a child that's diverse to walk into a classroom and see a mirror of themselves. That doesn't happen enough. I did a post on Instagram at one point, in the beginning of the LLC thing, of let me know when you had your first Black teacher or Black male teacher. And some people were like, wow, it didn't happen until I was in college, or it's never happened. Or some people are like, oh, it always happened because I lived in this demographic. But can you imagine that if you're going to educate a child that is brown and they never see someone that looks like them, and they're being asked every day to be their best, to arrive with their circumstances, their home background, but they never see someone that looks like them. So that's why it's important for educators and hiring managers of jobs for education and in the private sector to be mindful of that, of what their leadership looks like, what their board of trustee looks like, what their dean of students look like. If you have an all white dean of students, when you have a diverse student that makes a mistake, are they really going to be heard or seen or understood? If you have a student that looks up and sees a department chair and your department chair is not diverse, and you don't have one brown person as a department chair, what does that tell the student body as they reflect on leadership? If your school admin team, again, it goes at so many levels. Again, that's why Barack Obama was so damn special, because he represented something for a group of people to tell a generation of kids. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Thurgood Marshall, all their dreams and hard work and blood, sweat, and tears manifested in Barack Obama being the leader of the free world. Wow. That was a big moment. That was huge. And it goes for the same way as Black educators and educators in general that are diverse.
Wow, Jonathan, that's really something special you said there. I only had one Black male educator in the classroom, that is, prior to college. His name was Dr. Andre Horde. He is an English teacher. But I looked to other administrators and coaches like yourself all throughout that time, especially at independent schools, who helped me and were a mirror for me, like you are to your kids at Seattle Academy. So I want to thank you so much for those impassioned words and coming onto the show today. He coached against me for years when he was at Episcopal in the basketball program, and now he's the director of admissions, a promotion that he just got at Seattle Academy. Thank you so much.
Blessings to you, man.
I appreciate you for all that you do, especially bridging Legacies across campuses, his LLC, trying to make independent schools more diverse and in turn making education more diverse. So you're doing a huge number for us out there. I want to thank you so much again. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave with us or say, to cap off this new year?
I just want to say just thank you. I continue to love your support and others, and just love this network and this opportunity, and for you taking time out to do this. And just ask that you and everyone else remain safe and vigilant with COVID protocols and safety, and just ask everyone to be blessed in the new year. And so I look forward to working with you and staying in touch, AJ.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jonathan.